All right. Well, I've got him now. I've just told you a bit about the controversy. Dr. Peter Hotez, thank you for joining me. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thank you, my friend, for being such a support.
It's easy, and you give me the courage because it pales in comparison to the danger that you put yourself in every day just by speaking out at this point. I mean, today you were harassed at your home. Is that right?
Yeah, a couple of anti-vaccine people. Usually what they do is it's unusual for them to do it at my home. Usually it's either my place of work, or if I'm giving a lecture at a publicized venue, they kind of come up to you and shove a cell phone cam in your face and say provocative things to you in the hope that you say something stupid, so they'll edit it and put it up in YouTube or some other social media platform. But this time they were at my home laying in wait.
That's really disconcerting. I'm sorry about that. We talked earlier because, a lot of people obviously.
And I was looking my Sunday best, Father's Day best, in my when it's
Oh, you
100
had
when it's 100 degrees outside and
you had a
sweaty
silly.
but fortunately I had my Houston Texans
Yeah, that
t-shirt
was
on,
good.
so I showed some loyalty to
At
the
least
team
you
there.
had that. You had a silly hat. Nothing about it made nothing about that outfit made anyone think you're a shill. Put it that way. It
That's
looked
right.
like a
That's
guy
right.
just trying to survive the Texas heat at that
Right.
point.
Right.
This Sunday was a really crazy day. June 19th. It was Father's Day. Of course, you're a proud dad. You wrote a whole book about your daughter, and you were attacked by the triumvirate of Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, and RFK Jr. Have you seen a day quite like this in your career, and since all of this really heated up as of COVID's beginning?
Well, RFK Jr. has gone after me over the years and written untrue, terrible things about me in his books and in his writings and his blogs and his Instagram. So that, although he'd gone sort of quiet for a while, so I thought that was kind of in the past. But then, Joe Rogan, I always thought I had a good relationship with, and been on his show a couple of times, and even before he was Joe Rogan, I mean, even before he had his he had other shows I had been on. So I thought, I had a relationship with him. I didn't see that coming, and I didn't understand the pile-on from Elon Musk, which I have never really had much of a bone to pick with him.
Well,
So I didn't know where all I didn't, I was sort of taken aback. And of course, between the three of them, they pretty much have every follower on Twitter. So so the amplification effect was massive. So
and it has been all day. Have you ever seen the kind of volume and rhetoric, though? Is this day unprecedented in social media and in real life? Someone showing up at your house the same day?
no, I mean, that's why it's just been this pretty much 24, 36-hour barrage
Yeah.
of nasty. I mean, the anti-vaccine, anti-science aggression does come in waves. There's no question about that. And I think in this case, I saw a pickup a few days ago because Steve Bannon publicly declared me a criminal, quote unquote, and I don't know where that came from. So it's not going to be a good week when Steve Bannon calls you a criminal, and then
Do you
and
want to go ahead? Sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
Do you want to address any of the untrue, hurtful things RFK Jr. said about you in his book?
Well, it's always the stuff that I'm somehow linked to pharma companies, and the term that's often used is pharma shill. That's the buzzword of the day, and so a lot of it stems from that. But I don't take pharma money. We developed two COVID, and we've talked about it before, Pete.
Sure.
We've developed two COVID vaccines for global health, low cost alternative vaccines that work really well with no patent or minimizing strings attached to India and Indonesia. 100 million doses administered. So, we developed a model that showed that you can bypass pharma under pandemic threats that hadn't been done before, and to my knowledge, and so and one would think that someone like RFK or Joe Rogan or even Elon, who is so angry at the pharma companies, that they would see me as part of the solution instead of someone to attack and just make up phony baloney stuff that I'm linked to pharma companies. So I don't understand the rationale. I don't
How do
understand
they? I
the
mean,
logic.
that's one of the things that he said. I mean, do you have any links? It wouldn't be weird for you to have any links to pharmaceutical companies. You're in that world, but you work at the university level and develop your vaccines through a budget that you get from the university.
That's right. My salary is paid for by the college, by and Texas Children's Hospital, and I get research grants that offset some of my salary. That's how it works. And academic, I don't get extra money for it. It just picks up part of my salary, so the university doesn't have to be on the hook for the whole salary. And those come from the National Institutes of Health. They come from private foundations. One of the things they get really upset about is Gates Foundation funding. I don't have Gates Foundation funding. Haven't had it for the last decade. I'd like to, but we don't. And somehow they see Gates Foundation funding is pharma money, which I never really understood. That's a nonprofit 501c3. So no, I mean, no links to.
You don't get a bonus for every million children's lives you've saved with your vaccines.
Yeah, if only, right? So no,
I mean, that would be a moral incentive, by the way.
One
It's
would
not,
think, yeah, it's not a bad idea, but
yeah.
so
in terms of
I mean,
links
I
to
you know,
pharma, I
I
mean,
don't want to say I'm pristine, but I mean, it's pretty good, right? And I mean, what other revenue do I make? I mean, I write my books with Johns Hopkins University Press. It's a university press, and so I don't make very modest royalties on that. So no, I mean, I have a very solid middle class life. I'm not complaining. I love my life. I chose this. I was able to put 3 out of my 4 kids through college, and except Rachel, who has autism and special needs and couldn't do college. So I mean, and I live modestly. As the guy who filmed in front of my time home must have
right.
seen.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't pulling up to a palatial mansion in River Oaks, So I mean,
in terms of any other thing, did you read RFK's book? I don't even know if it's out yet. Did he send you an advanced copy? Did he contact you?
he has a book called The Real Anthony Fauci, where he went after me quite a
Yes.
bit. But quite honestly, I get so demoralized when I read. I mean, as soon as I see some nasty stuff, I just close the book, because if I start reading it in detail, I just find it too demoralizing. Then he did another interview about the book with someone who, and guess he repeated a lot of that nonsense, and I saw that one.
As far as your relationship with Joe Rogan, I just want to get this on the record, because you told me this years ago. I've been on Joe's show, and you've been on Joe's show, I think 3 times. And
I think
he would have
go ahead.
He would have you on because you are a respected, credible voice. And I'm not sure how much he challenged you at that point, but when COVID began and he started trafficking in some of these conspiracy theories and having doubts and all of that, you contacted Joe via email, via DM on Twitter. You guys had correspondence before, and he never replied to you. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, I was on twice on, I don't know if it was called the Joe Rogan Experience or what, but back when he was in LA before he moved it to Austin. And
Pre-COVID.
And what's that?
Pre-COVID.
Well, once was pre-COVID, once was as COVID was getting underway.
Okay.
And he could be challenging, and I can't say it was totally smooth, but it was reasonable, and I thought it was a very good discussion. Again, how we're making vaccines, out of the pharma sector, doing this nonprofit, making vaccines for the world. And then afterwards, he came to Houston for his comedy show in the Toyota Center, and I went backstage with my youngest son, and we hung out, had a beer. It was fun, and I mean, I even thought of him as sort of a friend of sorts. And then when COVID really started getting bad, I wrote to him, emailed him a couple of times, several times in 2021, and then no response, and once more in 2022. One, to talk about our vaccines, and again, how we're bypassing the pharma sector. And also, I was concerned because he was starting to invite some pretty hard-hitting anti-vaccine types on his show, and as that Delta wave was starting to roll through the South, through the southern states and my state of Texas, you were seeing all these unvaccinated Texans and my neighbors losing their lives because they believed the anti-vaccine disinformation. And I wanted to come on and, tell people to get their vaccines. But at that time, he didn't respond.
Never responded to you.
Yeah, that's right.
See, I think that's cowardly. I think that I'm in this and have been in the same exact boat as he has been my whole career. And before I would accuse somebody or before I would make certain assumptions or certainly assertions on my show, and I have a much smaller footprint than he does, I would call someone like you, especially if I was going to say them about you, especially if they were opposite of what you'd been saying. You know why I do that? Because I have your number, because we've talked before, because we have a prior relationship. That's how journalism is done. And that's what any responsible person with a huge platform should do. So let me just get off my soapbox and ask you about this whole debate thing. RFK Jr. goes on with Joe Rogan this past week. He's been everywhere. He's running for president now. You made a comment about his appearance on Twitter. Joe Rogan then basically responded, I think it was this morning.
By the way, I retweeted. I tweeted an article that was written in Vice magazine, and I emphasized some concerns about it, and because I thought again it was dangerous anti-vaccine rhetoric.
Yes, you wrote Spotify has stopped even sort of trying.
That was the title of the article.
Stem Joe Rogan's vaccine misinformation. That's the title. That's the title of the Vice article. Robert Kennedy replies, Peter, let's have the respectful, congenial, informative debate that the American people deserve. Joe Rogan quotes it all. Peter, if you claim what RFK Jr. is saying is misinformation, I'm offering you $100,000, a charity of your choice. You're willing to debate him on my show with no time limit. Now, that was like 24 hours ago since we're talking, or less, maybe. But since then, so many other trolls who have a lot of money have jumped on and raised it to like $1 million. Are you giving any consideration to going on Joe Rogan and debating RFK Jr.?
Oh, is it $1 million now? Oh, wow.
That's one. Yeah, over at this conservative website, PJ Media, they've got a list.
Is it actually people who pay their bills? I mean,
exactly. Well, I mean, like if you could legally guarantee the contract, all these people.
I mean, here's the problem when you. Well, first of all, let me say a general concept about debating science.
Yeah.
And then let me make a more specific content about debating RFK Jr. So debate, I don't understand what it really means to debate science. That's not the way we do science. I mean, I understand kind of what it means to debate 18th century Enlightenment philosophy and debate Rousseau and Hume and Bishop Berkeley. I understand what it means to debate in politics, but science is not typically done through debate. I mean, I suppose, there are some famous debates about evolution versus creationism, but generally, how is science done? It's done through writing scientific papers, submitting them, going through peer review, or in addition, you go to scientific conferences and you present your data in front of knowledgeable audiences for critical feedback, more often than not supportive feedback. That's how science is. That's not really done through debate. So I wouldn't even know how to do a debate in science, quite honestly. And then with Bobby, with Kennedy, as I called it when we were having conversations.
You have talked to him privately before.
Oh yeah, multiple times, and we can talk about that too. But the frustration and when we had our conversations, the frustration was the goalposts kept moving because, and the whole assertions about vaccines, he's not the only one to do it. Others did it as well, but kept on switching up because the original assertion was the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, and then the scientific community did a lot of expensive studies to show that there was no link between the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine and autism. Then it was switched up. Okay, then it must be thimerosal preservative that used to be in vaccines, and that was debunked. And then it was spacing vaccines too close together, and then it was alum vaccines. So you're always, kind of doing this. I don't know what you call it, whack-a-mole or moving the goalpost. And then it was the HPV vaccine for cervical cancer and other cancers. They said it caused infertility or autoimmunity. And so it became this kind of exhausting exercise. And then it was vaccines, given in pregnancy. So you were always, you never knew what was coming at you next. And then it was vaccines caused something called chronic illness, and whatever that is. And so that was, I found that very frustrating.
That
And
was basically what the conversations were like with him when you talked to him?
that's my recollection. And I didn't, and after a while you realize they weren't terribly productive. And I would assume that's more or less what it would be if I were to quote debate him on Joe Rogan. But then, you have the other problem is, I mean, I'm looking at all this in horror, because you have the harsh reality that so many Americans, including many in my state of Texas, needlessly died because they believed the anti-vaccine disinformation around COVID. My estimates: 40,000 Texans needlessly died, 200,000 Americans, and so this has become a major killing force. And I'm also reluctant to give that kind of attention or raise that to a serious, as though that were something to be seriously
Right.
entertained. So yeah, I don't see how one goes about quote either debating science in general and specifically debating RFK Jr. about this stuff.
Yeah, well, I fully agree with you. I wanted to ask you the question. I mean, all of certainly the really smart people that I respect talking about this have also said that what happens here is if you went on to debate someone who's not an expert, you're elevating their non-expertise, and they might be rhetorically able to pound the heck out of you, and you're not ready for this or that research or study, and these debates don't end up proving anything. Seth Abramson writes, the Hotez Rogan Musk silliness in a nutshell. Experts of whatever political stripe should always be willing to debate other experts of whatever political stripe. But experts should never debate abject fools posing as experts because they haven't earned the expert's time and attention. And that's just it. You spent your entire career working on these specific scientific issues, on vaccines, doing research. Nate Silver says turning down a debate me challenge isn't the own that people think. Having rhetorical skills in an adversarial format before a large audience is a nice but fairly niche skill that doesn't really correlate with underlying accuracy or really even courage of one's conviction. So there's a lot of really good arguments as to why you shouldn't go on this platform. But somebody might say, well, if they're going to give you $2 million, I guess you could use that to create more vaccines to save lives. But I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I just worry it'll set the field back.
Yeah.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I have a lot of respect for and admire, went on an anti-vaccine podcast, and I think if anything, it set us back. It doesn't really help us. So, my life now has got two parts to it. One, it's, making vaccines for the world's poorest people, making vaccines for the world. And that's something I set out to do 40 years ago when I did my MD Ph.D. in New York. And then the other is defending vaccines. And that's something I didn't sign up for, but it just kind of fell to me because I have a daughter with autism and wrote that book a few years ago called Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism. That gave me a front row seat to all of this. And what I've done is put it all in writing, right? Both in scientific papers and in books. And that, and I realize not a lot of people necessarily read books, but, I've put it down there. And if RFK Jr. has issues with what I've written, fair enough, let him counter it. But doesn't seem like what he wants to do.
I appreciate you joining me to talk about all this. I didn't want to get into too much of the accusations or the science around it, but I wanted to talk about kind of what's unfolded and how you see it and the history of this. So
I'm just trying to understand. It's I don't know what to do with it. I mean, you've got Elon Musk, going after me, and what's that about? And Steve Bannon going after me, and so it's got this element. It's got definitely these political overtones, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but it seems to me it's very much the attacks are very much politically motivated. Is that?
Oh, no doubt about it. This
Yeah.
is a huge, huge wedge for the right now. It just is. I mean, you understand that as well as anybody. It's also part of the information that correlates to COVID deaths, isn't it? I mean, you were challenged. You always be challenged on those numbers, as everybody should, about how many people died as a result of not getting vaccinated. I think nationwide, it's like 200,000, you say?
Yeah, and if you look at who died, it definitely has. It's not evenly distributed. It's, first of all, it's more in southern states, more in red states. And my colleague Charles Gaba works for ACA Signups, was among the first to do these analysis showing that the redder the county, the lower the immunization rates, the higher the death rates. And it's been confirmed by the New York Times. David Leonhardt of the New York Times calls it red COVID, and Axios and National Public Radio. And it's hard to talk about because, we're training as physicians and scientists. Say you're not really supposed to talk about Republicans and Democrats and liberals or conservatives. We're supposed to be politically neutral. But, if you want to save lives, I haven't found a way to talk about it without talking about it. I mean, I could care less about somebody's conservative views, even extreme views, right? I mean, that's not my business. My point is to say somehow we have to uncouple the anti-science from this because too many Americans are losing their lives.
Would you debate me right now about hot dogs, sandwich or not?
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, not where I grew up in New England. I don't think you could do that. I mean, is a lobster roll a sandwich? Is a clam roll? No, it's a roll, right? I just can't go there with you.
Wow, now you sound like a lobster shill.
That's right.
He's in the pocket of big lobster.
You can take the boy out of West Hartford, Connecticut, but you can't take the West Hartford, Connecticut out of the man. Yeah.
I appreciate you talking to me. I know there's a lot of pressure on you in so many different ways, but I hope that you know that there's so many of us that support you and your work.
Thank you. Yeah, the aggression's pretty bad right now, but it does. All I can say is I've seen maybe not quite this bad, but it's been bad before, and it comes in waves. It's usually, I remember when Tucker Carlson was going after me. Actually, it was on the same day I got nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize together with my colleague and Dr. Batazzi, and I guess he didn't feel I should enjoy the day too much, so he really went on a harangue against me on that evening broadcast, and that always sets off a whole. And it's the fellow travelers, because they believe this stuff and they send you horrible emails and write terrible things, or they stalk you and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the instant amplification of social media is just hard to really quantify.
Right.
I wonder if Jonas Salk, who you actually met and spoke to, was attacked this way, the way you and others have been.
No, he only had to endure the attacks in academia, which is and those guys don't screw around. I mean, their weapons are vicious, innuendo, faint praise. I mean, it's just brutal.
Peter Hotez, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Pete, and thanks for all your ongoing support. And it does mean a lot, because the worst is facing this stuff alone.
Yeah, you're not alone. There's so many of us that got your back. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. You're the best.
All right.